Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Calen Carpenter. With me is my partner, co-host, and father, Brandon. But before we get started, for those of you on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. You can shut off that notification bell if you really want to. But on Facebook, like, comment, and share. And then, of course, find us on Instagram at hashknife.ranch.mt. Now to the opening notes. Today, we're going to talk about Yellowstone, and not Yellowstone National Park. We're going to talk about the series. First of all, I'll warn anybody watching, be prepared for strong language. Thank you. All right. I kept hearing.
They're mouthy, man. They are. Wow.
Well, wait until it comes from us. I kept hearing about the series Yellowstone. Was so good, and everybody was like, "Oh, you need to see it. You need to see it." Especially in my circle of friends, it was up there in the same category as like places like or things like House of Cards and Game of Thrones. That's kind of like the I don't know, the magnetization that everybody had because it's such a kind of a cultural icon that it's becoming. So when I saw that the third season was released via DVD, I found a decent deal for all three seasons bundled together. I think it was on Amazon, and I just bought them all at once. Because I wanted to share and discuss this with Dad, I binged it over the course of about 10 days and wrote notes on all the episodes so we could talk about the realism and the myth and just the nonsense that's shown.
Okay, now with that, if it hadn't been for you buying those and sending them to me,
yeah,
I would have never watched it. Because every time something like this comes up, it is such a disappointment, and it is such a bullshit deal that's Hollywoodized that I mean, this has happened a number of times through my lifetime. Because I've always had TV,
and
movies.
There's some really good stuff in there.
Oh, there is.
There's a lot of stuff that's just no.
First of all, I got to tell you, that brand, phenomenal brand. One Iron, that's a great brand. But it's not a registered Montana brand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can see where the Y would look good, but with the quarter circle underneath, I thought with a single iron that'd be a little much. But
well, if you take a look at the upper part of the Hashknife,
yeah, well, that's the same.
Very similar to that, and that goes on very nicely. No, that's a great brand, but it's not a registered brand in Montana.
No, when I first saw it, I actually thought it was very similar to the Peter Yegan brand.
Oh no, that's a GY. No, that's not even
close. It was kind of the way that they. I don't know. There was something common. Anyway, I'm going to continue. What I should start with is the producers about this show have clearly decided they were looking for a modern Western. Now, some viewers are going to say, like, yeah, obviously it's a bunch of cowboys in the modern day. Yeah, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that they clearly want a classic shoot 'em up type show with more intricate details mixed throughout. And that's exactly what you get with the show.
A deeper story.
Yeah. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're definitely going to dive into the first season because it kind of sets the foundation for everything, the story and all that. We're probably going to mix seasons 2 and 3 together and then hopefully provide a full review of what we see as real ranchers on this mythical show and discuss the issues, good and bad, about all the seasons. We will go episode by episode because we do have notes. So anybody who's curious, they can see what we mean by some of our comments and maybe watch the episodes if they really like the show and then kind of see what we mean by that. So here's what my initial take is, and we'll get Dad's afterwards. Here's kind of my grades. We'll discuss this later in kind of our more full review and maybe change it slightly. But my initial grades are this. The overall rating for the show, I would say, is actually 4 out of 5 stars. The story rating, I'd say 4.5 out of 5 stars. But the realism rating is like, I'm being very, very generous here, 2.5 out of 5 stars. The reason being the cowboy and egg aspect is like 1 out of 5 stars, and the property and lifestyle aspect, I would say, is 4 out of 5. It's very similar, and just that's what I kind of took from it.
You know what? We haven't talked about this. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. With your ratings on all of those.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing
we're done. All right, cool. There you go.
First time ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the story is really good. The writing is good, but there's some, and we can talk about it. Let's just start.
Well, hold on. Here's kind of my review. Well, those are my stars, and here's the reason why. And this is what my initial thing is. Then we can start going episode 1 throughout. A recurring theme that really got me was the continuous battle to preserve the ranch. It's a constant struggle and a fight. The best example is when it's like that cartoon that you think of. You're at a dam and it keeps leaking, and you plug it whole, pull a hole here, and then you plug one here, and then then you got a third one. You're like, and then you're trying to you just don't have enough fingers
and toes.
Yep. And that's what happens. And so, as I've said before, I binged the 3 seasons in about a week and a half, so I could send the discs to Dad. And I found myself so angry because the story accuracy, with the struggle to keep the land was up there. And I guess that's what a good part of art does. It caters to your emotions. But anyway, everyone's a threat, and you will never get that until you really find yourself in our position. Now I recognize that's kind of an extremist view, but it's something that's becoming more real every day and every year. A very negative comment I will finish with is this: I wish they would have the series end how it usually ends, with smaller farmers and ranchers. And essentially that is, they lose everything despite their fight and the expenditure of all their resources. I mean, it happens, and you're watching it become more real every time. So,
well, and I think there's a real parallel here to get some social engineering done in a way, and that is the preservation of a very, very large ranch that this supposedly is. That's what's grabbing people's emotions, that if they side with him. And I tell you, there's no good guys in this thing, but I mean, there's a lot of bad people. There's some heroes and villains, at different degrees, and all of them, show all sides of that too. I mean, that's just the good writing of that, to try to take you through that roller coaster thing of emotion. But what they're doing is, I think, getting you to side with the large ranch and trying to hang on to this as a heritage. At the same time, if you just pluck that out of there and say, okay, this is a national forest, and we're trying to save this and have it for everybody, and that heritage, there's a little bit of parallel there that they want you to get, because in the 3rd season, what they try to do to it is turn everybody to try to preserve this thing, except for those that are the evil capitalists. But
well, and it's not only that, but the majority of ranches are not the size of the Yellowstone Ranch, and how they portray it. The other thing, it's like, well, just give up a little bit. Give up just a little bit. Like, you have too much. Just give up a little bit. And the point, and that's the point. It's like, listen, I give up this one section. And for those of you that don't know, one section is a mile by mile. It's 640 square acres. If somebody goes, just give up that one section, that's how it's, you take a rock and you start eroding it. And he's like, no, I will not. That is not what I'm going to do, because he knows if he does, it's just going to crumble after that.
Well, and it's the same old thing. It's hey, you're rich, wealthy, and have it. I don't, so therefore you should give it to me. I mean, if that isn't a political commentary of where we're at in our country right now, and globally, nothing is. So if you want to maintain your rights, if you want to maintain your values and what you have and what you've worked your butt off for, you're not going to give an inch. And then you're portrayed as a evil bastard if you do.
Right.
So, all right.
We'll start with episode 1.
All right.
So those of you that don't know, spoiler alert, because if you haven't seen it, you might want to stop now. So I got literally a notebook. Episode 1 was, I think the title was Daybreak. So I'm going to just go through my list, and I have quite the list for this first one. Wrong way to put down a horse, shooting it under the chin. That was stupid. Imminent domain issues. I had ? Indian casinos ? We don't have Indian casinos that I know of that are prevalent in Montana, not like anywhere else. I think there's one in Browning.
One down in Hardin too, but I think that's.
Is there one in Hardin now?
Yeah, there was. I don't know if it's still open or not.
backs out a wild Mustang stallion on the first trip ever of the trailer. Like,
That's
okay, yeah.
That's
Land.
interesting. Yeah, I got trailering a stud and then a halter on it and backs it out that you
Yep.
couldn't get. Really?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, I would have loved to see how long it took him to get that animal in the trailer, let alone letting it back out. All right.
Okay. There's two things that I hate to do, but I don't want many others to do it. And you guys have done it, had to, and that's to put down a horse or to
Yeah.
put down a dog. Those
Yeah.
are the two of the hardest things that you can do. And you want to do that humanely. And, you don't want them to necessarily see it coming, but it's the right thing to do at times. That is not the way to do it, the way he did that. That
Yeah.
is,
Well, first of all, the opening scene is like there's clearly a semi truck wreck or something,
Right.
and you see this horse and its legs broken off. I mean, it's severed off and it's gonna die. And you're like, oh boy, this is rough. And he's the old man, John Dutton, one of the main characters, is he's beat up a little bit. He just walks over to the horse and he pulls out like what, like almost like a 44 Magnum. And
yeah, it was a revolver.
It was massive. And he looks at the horse and kind of talks to it like, it's all right, buddy. And then he like puts it under the chin and shoots at it. I'm like, that's not how you do it. What's the cause of that anyway? Like, will that even work?
Boy, you'd have to. You'd have to.
I don't know. I'm not gonna test it. That's
I'm not
for
gonna
sure.
do that. No, I'm not gonna do that either. Because there's a very specific way to put a horse down. Very specific, and you use landmarks and
just like
you
cattle.
have to hit. Yeah, and you have to hit that very, very precisely for that to make an absolute good, clean kill. That I would not take that.
I'm never gonna take that risk.
No, I'm not gonna risk that. No, I'm gonna do it right. But if you think about it, how many movies do you see with a suicide with people and what they do? Yeah. So, they're stretching that. Either that or that writer doesn't have a clue what they're doing, or maybe it's purposeful to grab the emotion of people. I don't know what's going through that director or that writer's mind. But anyway, not real. You wouldn't do that.
First thing I saw, I was like, wow, okay.
It made it too. I've never seen a movie kind of start out like that with this what would normally be a huge climax to a scene.
Yeah, it's graphic also.
Oh yeah, it's very graphic. Yeah. So anyway, okay.
Yeah, catching the wild Mustang. I didn't really understand the purpose of that one, like why he was there. I think he was just trying to make money, is kind of what they're maybe showing.
Well, they're displacing these horses, right? With this activity, so somebody's going to grab them. And it might as well be him, and he's one of the only guys that can do it because he's got some skill. I mean, I understand what they're doing in their background there, but yeah, not quite the way that's going to work.
And then again, to boot, he's backing it out on the first try.
Right.
That's a process. That is not a lickety split. It's done. And if you want to check out Dad's video, load up because it's a process.
That's a process.
Next one I had was landowners aren't that wealthy. Things are run down / no mansion. That mansion, I saw a video recently on Facebook because I follow Yellowstone on Facebook. That mansion is from a dude ranch in Darby, Montana. Yeah. It's currently operational. It has been in their family for literally, I think 120 years or so.
And good for them. That's awesome.
And good for them. But how is that being supplied? Because it's a dude ranch. They literally make money by having people come and pay them to work.
Like, it's a motel.
Yeah. It's okay. No. I know we know a family that is actually, I wouldn't say filthy rich, but they're very well off. They're comfortable.
Work their asses off.
They do, and their houses do not look anything like that. Now, are their houses nice and larger than most? Yes. Nothing like that. Cowboys have softer size. John tries to meet his grandson. Yeah. I mean, it just showing that it's a different thing. Like, they're not all hard like candy with this giant hard outer core. Pulled calf runs away immediately. Says in parentheses, I put says breach before even looking. Like, they're on the road and they look out and they're like, oh, she's breach. You can't see from the road that the calf is breach. Like, come. Get out of here.
Cow was down. Well, I love it. They jump over the fence and he's got a calf puller over his shoulder.
Yeah.
They run for it. And she's laying down and he's holding her down. Good luck holding a 1,400
Oh yeah.
pound cow. And if it's 1,200 pounds, that's a fairly light cow,
Yeah.
right? So small frame cow, but holding it down, and then they pull by hand. Now I've pulled calves by hand, not like that. I mean, I had one this spring just a week or so ago that I pulled by hand, and I think you saw that, and that's rare. But for that calf to jump up, I mean, this calf was a month old
Like
at
6
least,
months
maybe
old.
6 weeks. Yeah.
Oh, jeez, the thing was
Yeah,
massive.
it wasn't even a month old. It was a couple months old, and it just takes off and runs. I was like, oh my god.
I was just like, and people buy this shit. That's what I was thinking like right away because they don't know any better.
They don't
And I'm
know.
like,
They don't
God
know.
dang it.
And there's can be some writing, some liberties taken there because people don't know. But God, you want things to be at least halfway depicted accurately, just like you
Yeah.
say with the wealth and some of the struggle and stuff. I never hardly saw a dirty pickup throughout that whole first 3 seasons.
No.
Everything's shiny bright. There was a couple very
They got some nice ranch pickups with the
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
emblazoned on the side. Yeah, no. And you want to talk about realism? Why don't you have? They've got a dude ranch right there. Why don't you have them film during calving season and be like, "Hey, buddy, you're gonna learn to calve today," and just film it, because then
Right.
you'd have a brand new calf that you'd be like, "Oh, look, it's getting taken care of."
They could work that in, but you know what? They don't want to take the time to do that because
No.
that's a lot of filming and it's going to end up on an editing floor somewhere. So
Yep. Yeah. The next one was $1,100 calf in 7 months. ... Yeah, right. Like, no. You seen cattle prices lately?
I know. I'd love that.
That's what he said. That was his comment. He's like, yeah, we do this because we get $1,100 calf every 7 months. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever.
Well, and I will say, you save everything you can because it's going to get as much as you can get because every dollar is going to go back into,
yeah.
you know, it may be only $600. It may be half that. But you do everything you can, and you know what? when they're higher priced like that, a lot of times that means you got a little wider margin. If you lost one, you're like, oh, okay, well, we'll make it up on the others. When you don't have that kind of margin, every animal counts and every pound counts.
Right. All the saddles are brand new.
I noticed that.
I caught that. Like, no. But it was a big deal when you got the lady. I think I was like around 10, and the lady was a custom hand built saddle made by a family friend and former client, and he had some really cool artwork done to it, and that thing was preserved for a while, and then it finally got used, and we're like, all right, now it's a using saddle. It's still the nicest saddle we got, but it's not brand new. And shiny.
Yeah, I mean it rides different than other saddles. Different saddles ride differently, and so I rarely put that on an animal that is likely or has a potential to blow up with me. I'd rather ride that other saddle because I can stay in it easier, better. Yeah. But this is a great saddle to ride, you know. So again, it may not fit necessarily. If it's a bigger horse or wider horse, then I'm going to use that saddle. So you fit the saddle of the horse. But yeah, you're getting super critical. I just kind of went, yeah.
No, I'm being critical.
Either you got to have a boy there to wax and polish every day when you come in.
Yeah. I put grandkid rides double with John. Make him ride his own horse. Like, they got their own horses. Make him ride his own horse. He's 9 years old.
If his dad truly is that good with horses, that kid's been riding.
Yeah. Make him ride his own horse. You're fine.
Yeah. I think the last time you guys rode double with me, you were probably 2.
Yeah, I was really little because I had my own saddle. I had my own little boots. Yeah.
I mean, you get kids started. You put them on a decent horse. It's going to babysit them, and that's how you learn.
And I think that's probably part of the reason why people say I do ride so well is because I had to start riding big boy saddles for like almost right away. And when you figure out how to balance yourself in all that space with your little tiny butt, like you kind of have to figure out how to balance.
Well, and I can remember being little and going. I can remember riding double because I was so small, and that saddle horn looked like it was this big around to me, and I could get both hands around the front of a saddle horn. I mean, it looked like you had a steering wheel or a dinner plate laying out there. And now it's like, well, little tiny saddle. And these were not big Mexican saddles. These were saddles that we eat, Western stock saddles.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, you're right. And you learn how to balance. And then I helped you guys out, which everybody does. I got you a little shorter set of stirrups to put on it, and so that you at least have some stirrups.
Yeah. I love those stirrups. Those are really handy.
Yeah.
Fishermen don't acknowledge. And then I put typical out of staters. So they're down there on the river and they're fishing. And then there's some clearly like out of state fly fishermen that were going through, and they're just floating on a boat, and they kind of wave to them, and the fishermen just kind of look like, I'm like, wow. That's
well, it's cultures. You talk about, you got a city culture, people out wanting to, they're spending whatever on their Orvis gear, and you're now, 8-9 states away paying for this thing that you want to do, and you bring that culture with you that they don't even look at each other in the eye on a street in larger cities. So
anyway, racial tensions are accurate. So that's talking about between the Native Americans and the essentially the Dutton family, but white people too. Like they just keep hitting that racial tension factor, and it gets a little less so in the later seasons because there's a bigger enemy that everybody kind of has to fight against. But those racial tensions are very accurate. I thought it was on point.
Yeah.
Not as windy as real life. There was no wind.
I haven't seen any wind.
They're supposed to be in Paradise Valley. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever been to Paradise Valley, Montana,
wind central.
There is on a not windy day, you're probably getting gusts of 15 miles an hour on a not windy day.
It's rare that there's no wind in that area. Yeah.
I had to put that note out there. I was like, there's no wind.
If this airs later, it doesn't matter. Right now, whoever you are, if you're watching this, take your phone and look up Livingston, Montana wind speed right now. See what it is. You're coming right off that eastern front. And that slope winds, and you're coming up from the Paradise Valley. You got the Shields Valley. Oh my God, it's that wind howls through there.
I don't know how windy it gets in Darby, but clearly not that windy because
Darby's in the mountains.
It's in the mountains. Yeah,
that's South Bitterroot Valley. It's definitely not windy there. They don't know what wind is.
One of my last comments was the tribe plays victim to get political leverage. I don't quite remember what I was talking about there, but I think they're probably trying to get a hold of the governor's I guess influence. That does happen at times, and I think that also goes back to the racial tensions thing. We as white people were like, no, listen, you're fine, and then they'll bring up issues from the tribes that are legitimate, but then there's other things that we're like, no, that's not an issue. For example, there was an issue with our local radio station. They said some accurate things about a certain Native American tribe and how they portray themselves at athletic events.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was accurate, they got booted off the air for a while and they got put in timeout. There's things like that because the tribes do have, and people can disagree with my comment on that. That's fine. I'm just saying, from my perspective, the tribes, just like white people, just like everybody else, they do play victim at times, and I think it's wrong. But and then the last comment for episode 1, I think he said something like, "We're gonna fight everybody" or something like that, and I was like, "Yep, that's kind of accurate." That was back to my original comment before. Episode 2, it says "Kill the Messenger" was the title. Taping the kid in the saddle. Oh yeah, no, you want to talk about hurting somebody? Let's not do that.
Well, especially somebody who doesn't know how.
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
But it was funny.
Well, yeah, it was funny. But you know what they used to do with women bronc riders, because there were in the 20s, 30s, 40s, there were women that were very good rodeo bronc riders. Most women, they wouldn't let them ride, but I believe it was Alice Greeno and I think we've mentioned this before in other episodes, but from Red Lodge, women could ride if they tied their stirrups. So their stirrups, but they weren't tied in. Their stirrups were tied so that they had a platform to ride with. And she would not ride with tied stirrups, as she rode like a man. And she was a hell of a rider. So, but to duct tape somebody in there, no, you're looking to kill somebody if you're trying
Yeah.
that. It's like,
That's
okay,
what I was
you're
thinking, like broken leg, broken pelvis, especially if that horse
horse
goes backwards.
kill them. Oh yeah, there's all
Which the
kinds.
horse was bucking and crow hopping and stuff like that. So I was like, you wouldn't be doing that.
Right, right.
It was funny though.
Yeah, it was.
Difficulty of transitioning vets. Oh, yeah, I was kind of talking about how I think Casey, the son,
Yeah.
having issues trying to transition to civilian life, and he's looking for work and stuff like that. That's a real thing.
It is. No, it's well, you know that as well as anybody.
Yeah, I think the reason why I put that in there is because there's also kind of, in a way, he's like a drifter, and we've had a couple of veterans at the ranch that, hey, we'll try and take care of you, help you out a little bit. Same thing, just
Yeah,
it is what it is.
he's just coming back home. He's drifting around right at home.
Yeah,
You know, he's not being part of what
which,
he was supposedly destined to do at this point. You know,
right. Well, and that's the other thing too, is if you watch the series, you find out he's a former SEAL, so he's got a very special skill set to kill people, hunt down and kill people, and to transition from something with that caliber and that training and that lifestyle. I have not personally done it. I have been around many men who have, and it's hard. It's a total mind flip, and so I understand it. I don't get it because I was never in that position, but I understand it very well.
well, I can tell you from a different perspective that's similar, and there's a paranoia there,
Yeah.
because it's a paranoia built on survival. You take any guy who's been in law enforcement at all, and it's the same thing. It's very similar. I spent 10 years doing that, and my 10 years was out in the hills, you know, with people that are, you know, a lot of times drunk or with weapons, and you're gonna spoil their fun because they've done something wrong. I can't shake that even today, and it's been 20 years since I was doing that. But that situational awareness, you can't help it. It's there. You find yourself, it gets so ingrained, and it's not as sharp as it was, I don't think, because it's just over time and my age maybe, but it's still there. And I get that. I don't get it to that degree because, you know, those guys are put in positions that are every day, you know, where they're maybe having to take somebody out. When mine was opportunistic, you know, and you're defensive about it, not on the offense.
Yeah,
So anyway,
it's also interesting because, like, military is 24/7, and then
right,
you come back and you have to figure out a different 24/7. Whereas
right.
law enforcement, it's switch the on off switch every 12 hours. You know, it's
Well, yeah, except that mine was 24/7 because you're on call all the time and you go
yeah,
in.
well,
Yeah,
a little different, but
a
for the
little
most
different,
part.
but yeah, not quite like those guys. I'm not saying it's very similar, but I understand that complete
Well,
mindset.
and I would argue, just as a conscientious thing, I would argue maybe the military is a little easier in that aspect because you're completely on or you're completely off. Whereas law enforcement, that's where I say every 12 hours, if you're doing a 12-hour shift or something,
Right.
you're swapping on and you're on. And then all of a sudden you're home, you're like, okay, now everything's good. You're like, that's hard. That's hard mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that transition back and forth is probably easier because you're dabbling in
Get
both
used to it.
sides all the time. You know.
Yeah. The third episode is titled Dark Horse, the Flank brand. I thought I saw something. Did they actually brand the flank? That's why I put it in question mark or
I
something like
didn't
that.
see that. There's no such thing as a flank brand.
Exactly. That's why I did that. I was like, is that a
There's a,
flank brand?
there's a thigh brand. On horses. There's either, and I don't like it. There's jaw brands when you put it on the
Yeah.
jaw. No. And if you want to get an available brand, you look in. There's some really nice brands of the state available for
Jaw.
horses. Jaw.
Yeah.
Nobody wants them, you know,
No.
because it disfigures them. But you got shoulder or hip, or I mean, I'm sorry, shoulder or thigh.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I knew that, but I thought that on the, I'd have to look again, but I thought on episode 3 they did like a flank brand. I was like, that's weird. Why would you do that?
I don't recall that.
Yeah, I'd have to look again. Remove ranches systematically through business and law. Yes. They show this starting with a guy I think named Jenkins, right? And
Yeah.
then that's the first season, and then it continues to transition to a different bad guy, excuse me, each season. Yeah, 100%. Use the law, use business. And essentially, let's go forward to season 3 real quick. They buy land, and what does it do? jacks property tax, and it forces you to fold. And that's exactly how they do it.
They're doing that right now in
Talked American Prairie
central
Reserve.
Montana. Yep, American Prairie Reserve. What used to be called, I had friends of ours who he is a big advocate of what was used to be called the Big Open, which they wanted to basically transition the Western U.S. and these grasslands, prairie, back to all buffalo and run the people off of them. And it's like, this is so ridiculous. It'll never happen. Well, guess what? They've changed the name and they've gotten European investors backing this in order to make it happen. And that's where we're at right now with the American Prairie Reserve.
Well, and I'm going to skip forward to episode 9 real quick, because this was a quote by the California bad guy. He said, "Run up property tax and force people out." That's what he said. And it's the same thing that it's the issue that Beth, the daughter of the old man, she's working for a guy that she's trying to protect her family, but by doing it, she's also causing a problem, because the guy says, don't haggle. His words were, "Don't haggle on price, just buy." What does that do? That raises property tax, because people, they're trying to make a little bit of profit on their land, or a lot. And if he doesn't haggle and bring it down, it's just going to run the property tax up. And essentially she's looking short term, going, yeah, this will save it for now, but also understanding that in the decades following, it'll force everything to fall under.
And it's different value for different focus or end game. And it's like, sometimes it's not sustainable.
Well, and the other thing too is, like, we've made this point too. You know, you look at a hillside that's rock shale, and you pay 1.2 million for it. That's not the same value as a prairie land that has actual grass and stuff like that. So you've taken useless ground and jacked up the useful ground because you decided to pay for it.
Yep.
Yeah. The burning bodies, same across cultures. I think they killed 2 guys that were trying to sexually assault a young Indian woman, if I remember right. And they burned bodies, and then there was something kind of sacred about that with the white guy amongst the Indians when they did it. And he said a comment about, it's kind of the same across. I thought it was very interesting, because it is. You look at Vikings and pyres. It's a human thing. I think there's something about fire and burning the body and returning it back to earth that's very interesting.
Fire and water are 2 very strong emotional pulls for humans.
Yeah.
Water for all animals, all living things. I mean, you can't survive without it, but fire particularly for humans, as a tool, or as a ceremonial thing, because we've harnessed it, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, we have. And then the last thing for that episode was Native American suicides. The brother's wife shoots herself. That's a pandemic. That's a huge issue. You want to talk about suicide issues in America? Talk about suicide issues on a reservation. It is astronomical.
You've got a couple of things. You've got a clash of cultures there. I mean, we could do an entire thing on this, and I'm no expert on it. I'm an observer over.
Yeah, I would say we are outsiders looking in, but very, very aware outsiders, because we're so close to those cultures.
Yeah, when you take a nomadic people who had a freaking fantastic life, man, what a great way of living 150, 175 years ago, before, it was really settled by us whites coming in. But a nomadic culture, hunt, gather, sustain, live that way. And then all of a sudden you can't do that anymore, and your food supply is gone, and you are forced, or you're made to live within a different culture, but you can't maintain the culture you've come from. I mean, what the hell? You should either do total immersion, or you let them live like they live, and that's not possible the way we're doing. Hell, we can't live like the way we used to live. We're the same thing systematically taken out like they were, a little differently, but it's still there. So how do you cope? You got alcoholism. In my biological background, biology, chemistry, the natives did not have alcoholic beverages.
That's weird. It surprises me too, because you would think that they could be able to do that. But if you're moving constantly too, I get it.
They had hallucinogens, but not alcohol.
Yeah.
And the ability to metabolize alcohol is not like it is on us.
White
They've
people.
not developed that. Yeah, so it does not take much alcohol to really screw up, that body system. And so you have alcoholism, you got drug abuse, you got drug use. They're lost. So what does that lead to? A lot of times, desperation. You can't support families, even though government subsidies are there. But if you've ever been across a reservation, look at how nice the housing is.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's the Western ghetto, is how I've explained it to people.
It is. Well, it
and,
is, and
and
at the
others
same,
and Native Americans can disagree with me all they want, but unfortunately, from my perspective, it's the Western ghetto.
yeah, it is. Sorry, you can probably hear this phone, but it is just. I should have turned that thing off. Anyhow, when the natives are put, from their nomadic lifestyle into a house, I mean, they don't take care of it the same way. I mean, it's cultural. It's completely cultural. So what are you going to do? And they end up desperation. They've utilized every resource they got, as if you call it a resource, that they've been given as far as a subsidy, and it's not enough. And you know what? They resort to suicide. It is an epidemic. You're exactly right, and it's horrendous, but it's real.
Well,
So
and I thought I had a note on here too, somewhere in here. But I mean, it alludes to the previous comment of, they killed the white guys that were trying to commit a sexual assault on the young girl. The the thing that I disagreed with in this show is, first of all, there's no reservation close to Paradise Valley. Let's get that out of the way. The
well,
closest one I think is the Crow Agency, which is over the mountains.
well, yeah. Well, the Paradise Valley is, I mean, it is on this side of the divide, but that reservation used to go over to there. It's been chopped back
A
and,
long
and
time ago.
pushed back. But if you go as the crow flies, you're probably looking at, you're looking at about 120 miles, 110 miles.
But
But
nowhere,
they don't.
it's not in proximity as how the show portrays.
It is not. It is not.
It's not right next to, yeah.
Right. Well, and one of the thing, and maybe you're headed there with this, is that every one of the assaults that I saw on this entire 3 years was whites on natives.
Yes.
And the missing and indigenous women movement is a very important one. But most of the time, the greatest majority of the time, these are people that are within their own nation and their own people, and women are not valued in that culture. And it's them against their own people, or other tribes against other
I would
tribes.
say other tribes are a big one, because there's a, whether people think so or not, there's a form of racism amongst the tribes. So if you're
Right.
a certain tribe, it's almost like gangs. That's probably the better way to put it. It's almost like gangs. If you're in one tribe, you are not accepted in the other tribe. And so there's very much a modern warfare, and one of those is sexual assaults and pure assaults and murder and
Right.
lots of things intertribally as well. And I think
Well,
that's where I just wanted that pointed out, is it's not always white on Native American. There's a lot of Native American on Native American, and it was not portrayed that way at all.
Right, and that happens a lot. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there is some other the white on, or Latino on, or black on. I mean, there's
Right.
but the great majority of that is their own natives against each other. Now, if you want to have some substantiation to that, the Lewis and Clark expedition come out here, 1804, on their way out.
Yeah, 1804 to 1806.
1806. They wintered over in the on the ocean at Fort Clatsop. But who did they run across in North Dakota? Run across Mandan Indians, and who did they have with them that helped them along this expedition? Probably was what made it successful.
A Shoshone woman from western Montana named Sacagawea.
And in fact, is where the Duttons, or this Yellowstone is portrayed at, is just a few miles, about 50 miles to the west, is a place called Three Forks, and it's the Madison, Gallatin, and Jefferson rivers combining to form the Missouri. and that's where her people were from, where she was from, and she was in a captured in a raiding party of Mandans onto the Shoshone back in the late 1700s, early right around 1800, and was taken back, her and another girl, and they were slaves. They were enslaved by the Mandans. So that's been well documented. So this is nothing new. This is a
Again,
cultural thing once
cultural.
again.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not saying it's good, not at all. It's just the way it is. So there's something we need to accept.
And I think it's just something that needed to be pointed out, because
I agree.
white guys aren't only the bad guys.
That's exactly right. And every time I saw that. But also the big part of the missing indigenous women, which I think is a travesty. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, if I had a daughter or wife that was in that same culture like that, I would be like, man, they'd be right next to me all the time. I mean, I couldn't let them go.
And I think the point of that movement too is everybody's behind it, but the way in which it's sometimes portrayed against, it's all white people against these Native American women. I'm like, that's not true.
Well, and the other part of that is the response from the law enforcement is blamed on the local law enforcement, and you can't blame them because it's the Bureau of Indian Affairs that has jurisdiction on that.
I was gonna say, this is something we're not gonna go down, but holy cow, you want to talk about convoluted legal process? There's 3 separate Supreme Court cases in the early 1800s that messed that all up for eternity. So I mean, yeah, the legal system regarding white on Native American on white, Native American on Native American, it's a stop. It is very confusing, and if you think that you understand it as somebody who's not very familiar with Native Americans or white people in general living together, it's just don't go there. But you might need a doctorate.
Yeah, well, it might make a doctorate for you if it's accurate and you don't have a political,
Yeah.
I wish that was done so that it, there was not any of the agendas. Spell it out what it is.
You know how you can solve that? Do some legitimate legal reform and legislation, and work not only at the state government but the federal government, and get them to sync together, and it would solve the problem. But nobody wants to do that because it's a hard issue. Just like immigration, nobody really wants to solve the problem because it's a hard problem.
How many people does it really affect?
Yeah, that's true.
The population, right? I mean, they're going to go.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, just Native Americans.
And I'm sure the Native Alaskans are the same way.
I have no doubt they are.
How about Native Hawaiians?
Yeah.
People from Guam.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it. Anything that is not of the majority.
And I would say on that point, shame on our politicians. We only have 3 representatives from Montana, but they could be doing a whole lot more for Native Americans in general by pushing forward legislation like that. And same with the North Dakota. I think they've only got 3 representatives. South Dakota can probably do the same thing. Like that right there is 9 representatives in Congress and the Senate that could do something.
And there's Wyoming on that as well. So yeah, but
I'm not familiar with how many reservations Wyoming has though.
They got a few. The Rickarah down there, Red River. There's a few.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
moving on. Episode 4, the long black train. Somebody said not a suicide, it was a sacrifice, alluding back to the Native American to an extent, also because of the issues that they see. I agree. In a sense, she killed herself so that her kids could be orphaned and taken off the reservation and away from that situation. It's a horrible way of doing it.
Right. They were taken by relatives who were
to Seattle,
had made a break. Right. Yeah. Is that really a better place? I mean, that can be argued.
Yeah, it can be. But that's the point, though, is, she kills herself so that they can get away from the reservation. I'm like, I've seen it.
Again, she checked out for desperation, too. But, I mean, I think it was a twofold thing. I mean, suicide's something that's a very selfish thing to do. It depends on your view of who you're around.
I agree. I can go down that road.
Yeah, I know.
Old cowboys back to work a week after surgery. Yep, seen it. You're looking at one of them, and it ain't me. I just gotta throw a bit. My left shoulder doesn't work, but I can grab this hay hook and I can drag this bale all the way out to the corral, and I can I can cut the wire. Yeah. Seen it.
If it hurts, hide it.
You're still alive. Yeah. Well,
Hide it.
keep
I'm
just
not the only one that's done stuff like that. I mean,
no.
everybody.
It's again. I think that's a
You
cultural
have
thing
to.
too. Hey, I got things to do, man. I can't let this hold me up. I got a family to feed. I got animals to take care of. Like I'm
Suck
gonna
it up
get
and
it
don't
done.
be a goddamn pussy.
Yeah,
You can
it's kind
do
of
it.
how it is.
Do it. It might take you a little longer, but do it.
Keep an eye on the little guys. Falls in the river. That's not just falling in river. That's up in haystacks. That's around animals. Just
Animals.
keep an
Oh
eye on those little
God.
puck. Yeah,
Yeah.
those little guys get themselves in
Yeah.
things. I said fighting, cowboys being assholes. I don't remember quite what I'm talking about, but yeah, cowboys are assholes. I hate cowboys.
Oh my God. You know, and it's nothing more than measuring peckers.
It
That's all
really
it is.
is. Yeah,
That's all it is.
it's just a
You know, and I'm
contest.
sure there's other subcultures within our country that do the same thing. You know, maybe a little bit more organized. Maybe they don't have the wherewithal of a basketball court. You know, so you make it up, you do whatever, and yeah, you know, and it's all you got to do is look at somebody wrong.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that's part of the accuracy too. That it's shown throughout the show, and there's a later part too. Like the doctor says something like, "Ah, fucking cowboys." I'm like, one, no, but two, yeah, you're right. Like it's
Well,
just like.
you get something banged up, and you ask a doc if you can go ahead and when he's putting a cast on, if you can cast your spur or put your spur in that cast so you can go back to work, and they get pissed when you say things like that.
Episode 5 coming home. Greatest concentration of wealth was a question mark. I think it was alluding to
People coming into the valley.
Yeah, it was the valley, and then I mean the most of the wealth in Montana too is in the mountains. So the western side of Montana, there's
Right.
because you have a lot of people coming out of state retiring there. You know, you got people like Tom Brady who visits Big Sky, Justin Timberlake and his wife, you know, the Kardashians. They bring money in, but it's all on the western side. So people never come to the eastern side, and that's where your more poor people are.
Yay.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that, but the problem is their side messes up our side.
Well, and maybe I've got this wrong, but I was thinking that she was talking about the greatest concentration of wealth of people that were there trying to develop, trying to take advantage, buy low, sell high, make a empire of, building skis or resorts, or like what they're doing. So, hey, what part was where that Casey was trying to pull a stump out with a tractor?
that was like the second or third episode, I think.
Yeah, flips it over. It's like, what the hell?
Well, he gets pissed off and stuff like that. Like that's not a reason to do that. Like you gotta think ahead, man.
Well, and then he goes over and under a bench and he grabs a bunch of explosives and puts under there. And I'm like, okay, who's just having their explosives hanging out under the bench on the outside of your house?
Yeah,
I mean that was kind of some phony shit.
Hey, but it worked. It worked.
Well, it's all about part of the
it then exposed the dinosaur bones and stuff. But if an explosion like that happened, it would have so messed up those bones. Like let's not.
Yeah.
No, a good point though. Another thing was when a teacher leaves the reservation, there's no line to fill that spot. That again, another issue. I think that's a very good point because again, there's education issues on the reservation as well, and I think that's one of them. You don't have a lot of teachers available, and one of the Casey's wife was the teacher, and she said, "Listen, I can't just leave the reservation. There's nobody to fill my spot like most other schools."
Well, and I went to school. Your mother and I both went to school with a gal who teaches on one of the reservations.
Yeah,
and she has kids that are, I think, a few years younger than you and your brother, but she's taught there her entire career after she got out of college with science degrees. And it's kind of interesting when you bring that up. There's racism that goes both ways because the kids in that school that are native, they get to go on field trips. They get to go do things. The white kids are exclusively banned. They do not. They are left out purposely and say, no white kids can go. No white kids can do
that's interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of racism that direction as well, but you don't see it
Right.
because that's very, very small. How many, there's a lot of white teachers on reservations.
Mm-hmm.
It's more rare, I think, to have native teachers. They're there certainly, but not as prevalent as a white teacher. So,
Right.
but you're right. It doesn't matter whether you're white or native, whatever. It doesn't matter. If you leave, who's going to fill that spot?
Right.
And the educational portion of that is a challenge. I mean, it's also cultural. You can't get kids to come to school.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's no such thing. They're not very timely.
When you talk about time, whites tend to be very monochronic, meaning, what time is it? We're constantly looking at our watch. And I've joked about this to say, you ask a white guy if he's hungry, he'll look at his watch to see what time it is. You ask an Indian, no, they don't even need it, because this time is not really an invention or a something of theirs. And so there's what we've called, and a lot of people here call Indian time. If it says something's going to start at 10 in the morning, it might be 2 in the afternoon. It might be later that you don't know. It's just whenever they decide to gather. And so getting them to be on a schedule in the schools is also an issue, and it's a cultural one.
Yeah. The next episode, I think it was the remembering. Is that what it is? Should have smelled the bear. Oh, there was a bear there. Those things smell. They are musky. It's something that when you smell it, and these guys have been there. They've lived in that area. They know what one smells like. There's no way that they would not have been able to smell that before they heard it or they saw it. Please.
Well, it depends on the wind, but there's no wind on
Not
Yellowstone.
that show. Yeah, they would have smelled it. Fly fishing technique sucks. Oh, I think they were just like whipping it, like doing it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do it, freaking learn, man.
Yeah.
Voting for the livestock commissioner. We don't have a livestock commissioner. Not that you vote for. It's like an appointed position.
It's appointed by the governor, and it's really
not even really a livestock commissioner. It's just
it's livestock enforcement. It's the it's the Montana Department of Livestock, and that's an appointed position by the governor.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not doing that. They don't have a SWAT team. Let's put it that way. Not that I'm aware of.
No, they don't have badges.
They finally gave those guys guns. I can remember being a warden in Miles City, and they had two livestock. They're agents or livestock detectives. They were brand inspectors / they would investigate any kind of stuff. Yeah, and both those guys, they finally gave them guns. This was in like 1992. 3.
You're dealing rustling and horse thieving is a real thing, and those are some dangerous guys. Like you don't think it's that big? It's a big deal because there's people hunting them, and they know that, right. And so you need a gun.
Yeah, I mean, and their joke was we had finally gotten issued cowboy hats for the state with the wardens. And I was like, yeah, baby, because I couldn't wear my hat. I was like, this sucks, but I wore it when I was out and about, and captain didn't know I was doing it, and it's like I don't care because it's what I do. But we got issued hats, and those guys, they came to a shoot with us, a qualification, and we're like, wow, you guys finally got these guys. Yeah, we have to pack these goddamn guns because game wardens started dressing like us. They all think we're game wardens. We have to shoot our way out of stuff.
Oh, that's pretty good.
They're kind of not wrong in eastern Montana.
Yeah. Oh man. Here was a quote: "Half of Bozeman is billionaires from California." Yeah.
Completely destroyed that town.
Yeah. I've been out of college 5 years now. I've been back to Bozeman about 3 times with you and Mom. Wow, in 5 years has it changed?
Well, and Braden has been out exactly right at a year now. And when you guys first got to Bozeman going to school, you loved Bozeman. It's like, this is awesome. And it had changed by then from what I remember Bozeman to be.
And I had heard people tell me that.
Yeah. And then I watched you guys, and now Braden's like, I hate this town. This sucks. It
pisses me off too.
Yeah.
They've changed it to a point where it's now become Missoula. Everything I disliked about Missoula, it's become that, and unfortunately.
Yep.
Which I should give them props though. There were videos of B-roll of them rolling through Livingston or Bozeman and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they nailed it. They got Livingston, they got Bozeman. In fact, it's Bozeman because the street signs have the Bobcat emblem on them.
Right.
For a fact. They had the Baxter Hotel. Yeah, they nailed it. That was good on them. They got it.
They at least went the extra effort to get some stock footage. Yeah, you're right.
Downtown Bozeman, that's exactly how it looks. It's absolutely beautiful because they preserved it that way. It used to be really shitty, and they brought it back, and they're kind of bringing more and more of that back, and it's beautiful. When you get to spend a summer in that area, it really is really nice right there. They did a good job. Episode 7, Monster is Among Us is the title. In quote, we don't share land around here to the Chinese tourists because they were out on his land and stuff like that. I think he ended up grabbing a shotgun and scaring him away. But
again, you're rich. You don't deserve this much ground.
Yeah. Well, and what's their cultural thing? It's owned by the government.
Right.
So I can just come wherever I want.
Right.
No, not here. Again, the doctor here was, in quote, fucking cowboys. Again, yeah, I agree. I absolutely hate cowboys. And then also, no, not all of us are that way. Just don't think all the cowboys are going to be an asshole when they come through the ER doors, even though they just came from a fight.
All right.
Ranching is to make it to next year, ... break even. We've talked about that many times. There's a lot of hemorrhaging of Montana's reserves to other states. Yeah, there was something about that. You want to talk about a resource state? Talk about Montana. Talk about the Dakotas. Talk about Wyoming. Like, we don't.
Idaho, big one too. Yeah.
Well, Idaho less as much, but man, the four of us. Yeah, it's what it is. They take our timber and they take our ore and stuff like that, but we don't really get much for it. It's, it's the epitome of ranching and farming. You're selling it or at wholesale and buying retail constantly. It's just, that's why we're so poor state. The way Walker, one of the characters, explains how the horses feel to Beth, like how I thought that was good. I actually did. I was like, hey, kind of talking about energy and you got to feel the horse and stuff like that. I was like, spot on.
Yep. No, he nailed that. That was, I don't know who. I mean, they've obviously got some people that are consulting that have got some really good stuff in there. Because I'm not trying to completely trash this. I'm not. I want to see. We're trying to point out what's not realistic in relation to what most people in ag do. Yeah. It's a story, but there's some stuff. There's some nuggets of things in there that are like, nice. They did that right.
I started that because I was like, that's cool. He did a very good job of explaining it.
Yep.
Trespassers, tourists, opening scene, the hikers who fall and die. I'm just kind of relating the two incidences. So John scares away the tourists, the Chinese tourists that were there in the bus. That's not actually as uncommon as you would think, probably, if it was that area, because what's in that area? Yellowstone National Park. So that it's very realistic that a bus could be there. So that's actually, it's not a bridge too far. The hikers also probably accurate, but it's like, you got to pay attention. And when somebody's trying to help you, you talked about this as a game warden, when somebody's trying to help you a certain way, there's a reason for it, and it's for the safety of them and you. You got to listen to them. Don't just like do your own thing. Well, what happens? They freaking die.
All right. That busload of Asians is funny, because when your mother and I got married, and we went to Glacier Park, and then we went down to Yellowstone, and we were walking up to the hot pots at Mammoth, and I just dressed like I dress, and there were, God, probably 3 buses of people from Japan, China. I'm not sure which again, it's my white guy Asians. I think I know what they are, but that doesn't necessarily mean where they come from. And we're walking up the boardwalk, and all of a sudden, we hear this, "Oh, cowboy!" And all of a sudden, they turn around, and we're hitting this. People are just taking pictures. It's like crazy, And oh my God, it was funny. So that happens.
Yep.
I mean, the Asian cultures have a real thing about our Western culture.
Well, it's wide open. It's beautiful. Right. There's the Wild West. Yeah, I get it.
Hey, I gotta say one thing, that at the end of one of the episodes where Beth and Rip go on a date.
Oh yeah.
So they can go out and just watch some wolves kill an elk. Yeah, you just don't go out and just, I'm gonna watch this. No, that doesn't happen. I mean, you're privileged to be able to see that happen if it does happen as a natural life cycle. But yeah, you just don't do that and go out on a date and say, okay, let's go watch some wolves kill an elk.
Yeah. No, good
That's
point. Good point. Uh, and then the last two episodes of this season, the Unraveling Part 1, uh, set as criminal for doing the right thing, difficult with the FWP officer, so Fish Wildlife Parks. Yeah, the dude, he had to kill a freaking bear in self-defense, and then they're like trying to set him up, and this is
right.
also the local cop too. They're hiding evidence going into part 2, setting up the he's kind of dirty because he's in the pocket of somebody else, and they're like, bro, this is precisely why some ranchers and farmers, when they have to shoot something that they don't want to shoot but they're forced to because it's going to take out their livestock, they don't say anything because they end up getting crucified. And it's like, I'll take the shot, I'll take the risk,
Well,
because
and with that, it wasn't the Fish and Game, it was the Fish and Wildlife Service, which are the feds, and the feds love to make
Yeah.
big splashes and destroy people
Yeah.
because they got the
well,
ability to.
and I think specifically, I was looking at the woman that was being difficult with Rip. It
Right.
ends up getting stuck with the fence post,
Yeah.
and he saves her. It's just, why do you have to be difficult? Why you got to be that way? Just because you think.
I worked with some of those people that were unbelievable. I mean, I was at a check station in Nebraska, a federal check station. So they took people from all the states and went down there. And there's this, and I wish I'd have never done it because I was talking to this guy, and I'm, you're looking things over, and I see he's got a feather. It's a raptor feather in his visor. Hey, where'd you pick that up? He goes, oh, I found it on the ground. I said, ah, dude, you can't have that. Fish and Wildlife Service guy right with me goes, oh, he's got a feather. They grabbed that and they wrote him like $150, $200 fine.
Oh, I'm
For
surprised
something
it was
he
that
picked up
low.
off the ground. It was, it was
I'm
surprisingly low,
surprised
but
they
I
didn't
felt
go
like,
like 10 grand or something.
right. But I mean, and I didn't even think, because you don't think that anybody's going to make that big of a deal of it. You're going to go, okay, well, you can't have that. But
It's almost like, hey, purple Sasquatch, and then making them go that way and like, okay, hey, take that feather, get rid of it.
I know, had I known that, I would have just looked and went, nope, not saying a word, and just
Yeah.
say, hey, under your breath or whatever. But anyway.
I put on here, take care of your tack. I don't remember where that came from, but yeah, take care of your tack. We've literally had in the shoot episode on that. It can cause injuries, hurt horses, stuff like that. There was a quote, and they were referring to truth, and the quote was, I put truth in kind of parentheses. Truth is an elusive thing out west. Fuck you. It's like, no. Some of the most honest people I've ever met are the humble rancher farmer. They're like, hey man, what do you need? I'll help you out. And
Right.
they're trying to make us look bad. I'm like, no.
Well, what it is, it's like we've got a lot of ground because we're greedy, and we get greedy by taking advantage of people. And that's kind of the message there. And it's like, no, you may or may not have a lot of ground. We don't, but we look like we do to somebody else. If you've got less ground than me, then I look like I'm wealthy, or you're going to have that persona, so it's, no, you don't know what it takes to try to hang on to this.
Make problems go away forever. Every rancher's goal. Yeah. Essentially try to solve the problem and just not have to deal with it again.
Right.
Again, I don't remember the specific instance I wrote that note down for, but yeah. Not trying to win it. This is a quote, not trying to win anything, just trying to preserve. Yes. It's what we're trying to do.
What the hell is there to win?
I think it was alluding to like trying to make a bunch of money and stuff like that. Like, it's not the case. We're just trying to preserve the way we live, be comfortable while we do it. And then, of course, we already talked about Jenkins while they were hanging him, run up the property tax and force people out. That was his answer. They're like, why are you doing this? Well, that's the reason. So with that, that's the first season. We're at about an hour, so I think we'll end this one.
All right.
So
actually, good writing. It's a good story.
For the first season, yeah, absolutely good.
Yeah, I mean, and they're setting the stage. I think I found less and less stuff later on. There's still some things there, but it's less. But because they're setting this, I think they're trying to capture again the emotion of people, and really set it up as, well, hey, shucks, this is what we do.
It's definitely
gathering cattle with a helicopter. No,
yeah, it's definitely wishy-washy when it showing ranchers and farmers, but I think the lifestyle, and then especially like pointing out some of those things that we pointed out with reservation and some of the details and stuff like that, I think they did a really good job.
Yeah, they did. They depicted that, I think, well, and reasonably accurate. So if you've ever been up through any reservation, Browning, it kind of reminded me of Browning area.
Yeah.
you know, that this fictional was a Broken Rock Reservation.
I thought the same thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, basically because the mountains in there, the where it meets the prairie, you know, the downslope
Right.
area. So it reminded me a lot of that, and you know, some of the like Poplar area too, where it's, of course, I think they used a little look of the like the southwestern reservations too, where there's, you know, nothing, no vegetation,
Yeah.
you know, except for, you know, some sagebrush and stuff. So I think they've piecemealed that together to make it look like, you know, Dutton's got this lush thing, and then the fence line is the reservation, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, desolate. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's not a real transition
true. Yeah.
in a ecological areas like
I'd
that.
say
So
the greasy grass area, like lodge grass and stuff like that, they actually
great
beautiful.
grass area.
Yeah.
Oh, great grass area. Yeah, really good. So,
All
all
right.
right, well, good. Season 1 knocked out easily.
And so with that, I think we'll thank you till
Well,
you're better paid.
there you go.